Welcome, everyone. This is Brian from Crowdwise. Today, I am here with Neil Malhotra from vRotors, founder and president. We're going to be able to talk to Neil today to find out a little bit more about why he's chosen equity crowdfunding and how their campaign is going. But also, we're going to find out more about the business vRotors. So to start things out, Neil, why don't you tell us who you are, kind of where you came from, and how you came to work on vRotors?
Absolutely. And great to speak with you today, Brian, and everybody out there. So I grew up in West Virginia, always had a passion for airplanes, the space shuttle in those days, and really followed that for my career. So I went to University of Michigan for aerospace engineering, came out to California, got involved with NASA JPL. And then, of course, being in LA, got involved with the entertainment industry out here. I was CTO for Skybound, The Walking Dead, and some really cool stuff. And it turns out drones started to be available for consumers. And so being an aviation nut, I was like one of the first persons to buy that. And coincidentally, they had a Kickstarter for the VR headset from Oculus, almost exactly at the same time. And so I got one of those too. And of course, it dawned on me that, hey, couldn't we just have that virtual presence inside the drone to have a flight? Because I love to fly. It's, it tends to be expensive and you can't do it every day. And really, I just wanted to have that experience. And so started to experiment around with it. And a couple years ago, it finally reached the point where it wasn't crashing over my neighbor's walls. And I could actually show people, share the experience, and people reacted really well to it. Like, the magic of flight. You hit takeoff and you're going up a couple hundred feet in the air, and it's like, wow, I'm up there. And from that, then we really started to think, well, maybe we've created something interesting here. Being from the Walking Dead background and all, we naturally went toward a gamification of the experience. And so we came up with drone racing as being the basis of what we want to share with everybody.
That's awesome. Now, for a lot of the listeners and viewers of this who are maybe founders and entrepreneurs, I think
Sure.
a lot of the questions that are going through their mind is, is equity crowdfunding maybe right for me? Would you be able to share a little bit of just what kind of drew you to equity crowdfunding and, some of the things
Sure.
that maybe those founders can ask themselves to help, decide if it's right for them?
Absolutely. So there is, it's well known, a traditional path of venture funding through VCs or angels. It's a very low percentage of companies that are actually going to achieve that. And it doesn't say that, those majority of companies, there's anything wrong with them or there's not a great opportunity. It's just that that's how the numbers work out. There's just a lot of companies and not many of these angels and VCs around. So they have their choice, if you will. So that's certainly one part of it that any startup founder faces, is that they are doing something great, but they're not necessarily getting traction with the traditional investment side. The other side, which really was what excited me, was being a consumer-facing experience. Community is absolutely core to what we're doing, right? So we want a community that's excited about, racing drones around the world, and crowdfunding is totally sympathetic to that. Is exactly the same thing. As you're building a community through your crowdfunding, you're building a community for your customer base, and they can be some of your greatest evangelists. So really, once you start to get into it, and the magic moment happens when you have that crowdfunder who they just tell you that they're excited about it, and that feeling that you get, you made the right choice.
That's awesome. And, another question that those same entrepreneurs and founders are maybe asking is, there's so many options out there, right, in terms of
Sure.
funding portals.
Sure.
Can you maybe just talk a little bit about what drew you to StartEngine and how your experience has been so far working there?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we did look at a number of the portals and talk to them, Republic, namely, um, and some of the others. StartEngine in particular, first of all, it's based in Los Angeles. Howard Marks, the founder, was my co-founder at Acclaim Games. And I don't know if you knew that, Brian. So I was CTO at Acclaim Games and Howard was CEO. So that relationship obviously plays a part into it.
Definitely. Any good stories about Howard? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I would say that his whatever picture he uses tends to be about 5 years ago. I tend to do the same thing, but I always smile when I see him.
Awesome. So let's maybe transition and kind of learn and hear a little bit more from you about your business, vRotors.
Sure.
I think that the industry that you're in is very interesting, obviously, because you're kind of the culmination and the coming together of, drones and esports and potentially AR, VR. Can you maybe
Yeah,
just talk about what are some of those industry dynamics and forces that you're seeing today and where
sure.
you think you see vRotors playing a role in that moving forward?
Absolutely. So uh, we see vRotors very much as being what we would call a telerobotics platform. And what that means is we're offering the ability for somebody anywhere in the world to extend themselves through a robot in another place in the world. And we very much see that as a future, core future vertical in technology. And it's propelled by 5G, but it's certainly also propelled by the reality of wanting to, live in a certain place and yet work or be entertained in another place in a real way. And so we see this as being really a trend for the future. And so today, drones represent very much robots. They are a very readily available robot through which you can extend yourself into the sky. And through vRotors, you can actually race drones anywhere in the world. So from your home, use your PC or your VR headset. We think this virtual presence is very much the trend for the future. So when you look at AR, VR, it is all converging together to provide a sense of virtual presence, whether it's in a fictional rendered scenario, or in the case of vRotors, in a real location somewhere else in the world. And that's where we fit in. So we're really see ourselves as an enabler of that future. That's the long-term plan.
Out of curiosity, can you give us an idea what some of those locations have been so far that you've gone through?
Absolutely. So we are based in Los Angeles, and so the places where our team directly has been flying with streamers from around the world are around Southern California. So we have a location obviously over the ocean with whales. It's been quite interesting actually underneath, and dolphins. And we have a location more in the desert area with mountains in the background. And because California has these varied landscapes. And the interesting thing, whether the pilot's from the UK or South America or wherever, it is about, feeling that presence in that Southern California location. And we are talking to partners in Australia and Dubai as the next expansion points. And I think that'll be an exciting opportunity for everybody to be able to do that.
That sounds really neat to be able to kind of travel the world virtually,
Yeah,
at least throughout this experience.
exactly.
So, from a product perspective, can you maybe talk about where you're at today in terms of the product, the
Uh-huh.
technology? And I guess a few of the questions I would have are, are you depending on any or waiting on any technology of either drones or VR or anything, or what's kind of the roadmap there?
Sure. And so we have spent a few years building out this platform. We actually launched live in December with Twitch and Mixer streamers. These are the game influencers out there streaming live to audiences. So our platform is live. And they use anything from their Oculus Quest headset to their PCs or Macs, and they race every weekend in our tournaments. We define the courses in AR, and so we tend to put every weekend a new AR object with a theme. So we had, 100-foot tall Easter eggs for Easter, and so we got a Mother's Day surprise coming up as well. And so it's really fun. So, you're flying in a 5 to 10 acre course. It is real. We've flown over 450 races so far. And it's just fantastic, exciting. I do want to note as further that we are part of the X Prize Avatar competition. And this is a $10 million competition for operating a remote humanoid robot. We're partners with Duke University and the University of Illinois. Our platform provides that telerobotics control while the universities are building the actual hardware robot. So there's some really interesting technology underlying this. Our go-to-market is clearly the drone racing, because it's something everyone can do today and can relate to. But it's touching on what's coming in the future.
Interesting. So can you maybe talk just a little bit more about that business model, how someone
Sure.
participates in this, and how you charge, how you make money, or will in the
Absolutely.
future?
So we are the next step we have. So we've been flying with Twitch and Mixer streamers to build audience awareness, and especially important to get their feedback on the experience, the controls, and really tune the experience for the esports that it is. The next release we have is for a simulator version. So it's a simulator version you buy on Steam for around $10, and you actually fly in a simulated environment of the actual course location that you can fly the real drone in. And that $10 revenue by gamers is really the core revenue source for the company initially. And they will qualify through a tournament process in the simulator to be in the real race on the weekends. So obviously it's the best of the best who will reach that level. Although the skills required, anybody can do it, just take some practice. And if you don't make it, you can be in the audience and watch the live stream.
Now, are these racers bringing their own drones, or in terms of what you guys own for
Uh-huh.
actual assets, what does
Uh-huh.
that look like, and how does that scale?
Yeah, so the pilots, the gamers are just at home with their PC or their VR headset. And on the courses we have in California, we have our drones and our operators there on site um, uh, taking care of those. And you're racing those drones. Now, when we talk about our expansion, it's really with partners. So if we look at Australia, it's the Australian partner who will manage the course, own the drones locally there, and similarly in Dubai. And long term, which is kind of interesting for all the drone owners out there, we plan to open up the platform for any drone owner to contribute their drone to the ecosystem. So it really becomes kind of in the middle of all these remote pilots, if you will, and then all the drone owners all over the world. And it's one ecosystem, and everybody can fly wherever they'd like to. It should be pretty exciting.
Yeah, it sounds it. Now, what about competition? Are there
Uh-huh.
competitors out there? Who do you consider your competitors, and what does that competitive landscape look like?
Sure, absolutely. There tends to be competitors in each of the verticals around which that we have converged for all of them. So what do I mean by that? So if you look at the enterprise drone space, there certainly are companies which are involved with remote drone piloting for law enforcement, certainly for the military and defense. But they have not been pushed to the degree of low latency and general robustness because of what were our use cases. So we are drone racing with people, gamers around the world with varying network conditions who disconnect and yet still can reconnect and continue flying the drone. The severity of what the environment that we're flying in, plus the demands of the responsiveness of drone racing have really pushed us to a level above. In addition, we have applied augmented reality into these 5 or 10 acre courses. So that defines what the course is. And it's really a novel implementation of augmented reality. Like I mentioned before, 100-foot tall Easter eggs. These are huge objects in space through which, in the environment through which you're flying. And there's no SDK, there's no standard way that could just be implemented. It's something that we had to innovate and have some unique proprietary capabilities there. And then finally, this is multi-user, right? So in the cockpit, it's two pilots. You and I in VR actually look at each other. We're in VR form. And so it's the ability to control a robot with multi-users in a mixed reality platform is really what has distinguished us from others who do have capabilities in a single vertical way, but not at this total convergence.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I think you probably touched on it through what you were just saying, but in terms of your defensibility, from some of these other competitors, do you have IP? Is it kind of trade secrets in terms of it's just proprietary? Is it that you started this before other people are working on it? What do you kind of see as your moat around the business?
Yeah, we have thousands of hours of I'm going to call it telerobotics experience with drones out over the ocean, pilots in thousands of miles away. And the proprietary knowledge and technology that we've developed to accomplish that along the way is not easy to replicate unless you, again, go through that entire process. And so we really have a head start. Our relationship with the X Prize competition and Duke University puts us really at the leading edge of robotics in general. And so we have the ability to bring all of that back into our platform by being involved in that program. So again, these kinds of things that we're doing keep us really on the leading edge.
Nice. So what does your vision long-term kind of look like to, if everything went according to plan? And I know everything, things will always change, but what does this look like in a couple of years, 5 years from now? What's your vision for it?
Yeah, well, if you're talking about 5 years from now, we'd like to take everybody to the moon. And what do I mean by that? Well, in cooperation with perhaps NASA or another agency, putting a robot on Mars is absolutely in the plans. Mars it plays very big into NASA, and through vRotors, we can extend that experience in real time to millions of people. And I think, if I set, what is the culmination of goals, it's really about that experience and being able to share that. Being on the moon with millions of people, honestly, that's really the goal. And it's not that millions of people would necessarily control the robot, but what they do is they actually ride along with the people who are controlling the robot, and so they can see the robot operators conversing and making decisions. And as the robot arm actually digs into the moon, for example, there's haptic feedback that comes right back into the audience because you're sitting there with them. So it's really about sharing that experience. But this is our vision: take you to the moon.
I love it. Being an aerospace, obviously engineer myself, I can see the passion in you, but I see where it's coming from. How about in terms of obstacles or anything else that you're working, in near term to kind of overcome? Is there anything that's really on your radar, and kind of what are you doing to overcome them?
Sure. And it's timely that you would mention being engineers. So one of the biggest challenges that we have is really in marketing. It doesn't often come naturally to an engineer to market. And so one thing we're really looking forward to is to augment the team with somebody who's very tuned for marketing and business operations. I think that's really going to help us move to the next phase. And I would say that's our biggest challenge right now.
All right. So if there's any marketers out there watching this right now, or if you have anyone in your network, reach out to Neil. Well, we're kind of coming up on time here, Neil, so we can start to wrap things up. But is there anything else you want to share with either investors or other entrepreneurs that are out there watching this?
Yeah, well, we'd love to invite you to join us. in these experiences. So come visit our website, vrotors.com. We list our upcoming events, whether it's races. We also have virtual tour flights where you can just join in, especially if you have a VR headset. You can join in into the cockpit of the actual drone as it's flying around and getting commentary from the pilots. It's really cool. We call it the ride-along experience, and it's interactive, so you can actually give feedback to the pilots as well. And you can watch our races. And then as the simulator comes out, we'd love for you to download that and try it out and be the pilot, the best pilot that you can, and go up the leaderboards. We are doing some crowdfunding, so if you're interested, please visit our website there. That's at StartEngine/vRotors.
Great. So thanks again, Neil, for your time today. People will be either reaching out to you, visiting the website, or heading over to StartEngine, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Thanks, everybody.